last we left was on the 8th mantra. Na chakshusha guhyate na api vacha nanyai devai tapasa karmanava jnana prasadena vishuddha sattvam tatastutam pashyate nishkalam dhyayamanaha. That indivisible being, that indivisible Brahman, is not experienced by the eye, is not experienced by the speech or the other senses. Na chakshusha guhyate na api vacha na anyai devai. That Brahman is not experienced. Why is it not experienced by the eye, not experienced by the speech, not experienced by the other senses? The eye refers to the organs of perception. God cannot be perceived through the organs of perception. Not experienced by the speech. Why can't be God experienced by the speech? Speech is an organ of action. You can't attain God through karmendriyas. You can't reach God through the jnanendriyas. You can't reach God through the karmendriyas. Or the other senses refers to the mind and intellect. So the Brahman is not something which can be experienced through the organs of perception, organs of action, or the mind and intellect. The simple reason is that God is not which can be captured as an object of perception, not an object of emotion, not an object of action, not an object of thought. Since Brahman is not a tangible object, Brahman is not, it can't be objectified. Therefore, it is to be said that it cannot be experienced. In fact, they say Brahman is not an experience. Because in any experience, you need the subject and object, as we understand. We need the perceiver, we need the perceived. But in the experience, or when you get to that state of Brahman, there is no subject and object. There is no experiencer, there is no experienced. The subject and object merge to become one. Therefore, they say self-realization of Brahman is not an experience. So in that one statement, he says, God is not an object which can be experienced. Then how can one attain Brahman? Tapasa, karma, jnana prasadena, We already covered the eighth mantra. I'm just trying to recap so that we get back to the text. Through karma, through tapaha, through jnanam, one can be reached, Brahman can be reached. So whenever the Shastras use karma, action, it obviously refers to the spirit of yajna. In fact, in the retreat in Malaysia, we have studied the three pillars of wisdom. The three pillars of wisdom are yajna, tapa, danam. Yajna is sacrifice, tapa is austerity, danam is charity or gift. So whenever they talk of yajna, they talk action, in they're talking of yajna. Yajna is at every step, at every action you perform, you have the capacity to raise your level of yajna, to raise your level of sacrifice. So through karma, that is at the physical level, tapaha, austerity, we said it is at the emotional level. At the emotional level, when you perform tapas, you're conserving your mental energies, which is bhakti, jnana prasadena. Through the grace of jnanam, jnanam, as we understand, is the process of internalizing the knowledge, which is through the process of the swadhyaya, the process of study and reflection. So when one does the karma, bhakti and jnanam, it reaches you to a state where you, as he says, then meditating. So tataha, tataha is then, when and then. Only when you do, what do you do? Karma, tapa, jnanam, tataha, then you start meditating. Dhyayamanaha. What is the prerequisite to meditate? Vishuddha sattvaha. Just play the, show the eighth mantra. Ma. There you go. So the indivisible being is not experienced by eye, speech, or senses. Through action, tapaha and jnanam, karma, tapa, jnanam, and then meditating with the purified mind. Only a purified mind can meditate. So the practices of karma, bhakti, jnanam, which is nothing but karma, tapaha, and jnanam in the context, through the performance of the karma, bhakti, jnanam, one achieves the objective of cleansing the mind or purifying the mind. And the purified mind here is nothing but a mind which is established in sattva, vishuddha sattvaha. And with a purified mind meditating, one realizes that pashyate tam pashyate. Tam means that. Pashyate perceives. One realizes that. So the objective of spiritual sadhana is to continuously make sure the mind becomes purer. That is the objective. And you would remember that the detailed discussion we had in the last satsang, the importance of keeping the three yogas performed in proportion to your requirement, in proportion to your constitution. So the karma, bhakti, jnanam, the three yogas must be proportionated according to your constitution. What is your physical, mental, and intellectual personalities? I can't wear your garments, you can't wear my garments, because the garments I wear are stitched to my personality. And I look good if I wear the robes that are stitched to my proportion. I can't wear your proportion. So how can I fit into your personality? So you should do the most fundamental thing which is not done. Hardly anybody approaches it scientifically, because there's no guru out there telling you to do it scientifically. So the first step is like a doctor, a job of a doctor. He can't give a standard medicine to every patient who walks into his clinic. The job of a doctor is to proportion the medicine to the requirements of the patient. In fact, that's where we differentiate the difference between information and application of information. We can have information if you are well versed in any particular field, you can be well informed. I can be well informed in medicine. But if I'm not able to apply that medicine with reference to the constitution, you know, what's the first thing a doctor asks you when you go to, before he starts prescribing you any medication? Any doctor would ask you. Yes, what would a doctor ask you before he starts prescribing you, knowing your problem? What would he ask you?
If you are allergic to any medicines.
All right, you're allergic to any medication. What else?
What are the medicines you are taking?
All right. What are the medicines you're taking? Now, why are you laughing? I'm talking
because
very
I'm
seriously
not answering
here.
what you are thinking.
That you got me right. No, you're not wrong. But what else? The doctor would ask. He would be very mindful. What are your underlying diseases? Are you diabetic? You have any blood sugar? You have any blood pressure? You have any this problem? You have any kidney problem? You have any that problem? Have you been? So he takes your history into account. Because if he goes about unmindful of prescribing any medication without taking your history into account, it will have complications, right? In fact, it's always a balancing act. If I prescribe this medicine, it should not affect your kidney. And if I give this medication, it should not affect your heart. In fact, even before you are you undergo through a procedure, they go through a series of tests to make sure that everything is in line so that this particular procedure can go on seamlessly, isn't it? If one doesn't take that into account and plunges into a specific course of action, it will have complications. Exactly that same way, if I start gaining knowledge, if I start practicing bhakti, if I start performing karma, unmindful of what my personality is, unmindful of what my requirements are, it has serious complications. Nobody is aware, nobody is mindful of what complications it creates. My creatinine is going high. I don't know. Beyond that, my knowledge is very limited. Serious complications. Guruji,
what disease we have is easy for us to say, but how do we know our constitution? That is, to analyze ourselves is a problem.
That's why you need to go to a doctor.
But I've been to a doctor for the past 15 years.
Useless doctor, change the doctor. Useless doctor. I recommend you to highly change him. Waste fellow, fit for nothing. I endorse your understanding. You high time to change. No, it's not difficult. As I've told you earlier in the last session when we had on this, I told you it is important to find out your own constitution through self-analysis. A guru or a guide can only help you to use the right measuring tools for self-evaluation, but you will only have to do that self-analysis. Now, as we have said, primarily you need to understand whether you are an emotional person, whether you are an intellectual person, or is there a balance of head or emotion? That is not difficult to find out. So when your head is more pronounced, you're a rational person. When your mind is more pronounced, you're an emotional person. When there's a balance of head and heart, you're a person who is more prone to action. Based on this constitution, you need to give yourself the yogas. Now, the question is whether the effort is being put in. If you put in that effort in this direction, you will certainly have clarity. Are you able to get what I'm saying, ma'am? But if one does not do this, then it doesn't bring about result or optimum result. Considering the effort is being put in, considering you are very sincere, considering you are putting in effort. But if this is not being mindful, it's like you may be taking medication, but if it doesn't suit your personality, it brings about side effects. I remember somebody whom I had known had an issue, and the person used to feel, in fact, she had spondylitis, and that person used to feel giddy, went to the doctor, and doctor changed the medication. 2 days after ritualistically taking the medication, in fact, it was not getting better, it got worse. Called the doctor. The doctor said immediately stop the medication. So the medication is causing more trouble than solving the problem. They said, no, I don't think this combination is right. I'll give you a new combination. Try this combination and let me know after trying the combination. It's a scientific, what I'm trying to get at is it's a very scientific approach. If you have to mold or mend or repair your body, you have to approach the science, which is very scientific. If you have to mend your mind, you are trying to transform the nature of your mind, and it's not an easy matter. So the lack of scientific mindedness is apparent, which is being highlighted. But if you are rational to it, if you start approaching it in that manner, there is certainly clarity in giving ourselves what we need. So one should not plunge into it impulsively, but rather it should be taken up with careful administration. That's all I'm saying. Including which books you read, what you read. It's very, very careful. If I visit your library, there may be half the books you should not read. I would not take names, very popular names. And you will read them for your transformation, and they will do more damage than good. In that sense, it is very careful. Okay. Yes, Hariji.
Here he has mentioned, the Rishi has mentioned karma, tapas, and jnana. Tapas is austerity. Does it mean only bhakti? Because why is he using that word austerity instead of directly telling bhakti? Because even if I try to restrict my karmendriyas, my body, that also comes under the category of austerity.
See, always in the context is interpreted that way.
Okay.
Tapaha is not just physical conservation of energy, it's a mental conservation of energy.
Also intellectual. Even if I try to train my intellect so that I have got austerity, intellectual austerity.
No,
is there any hidden meaning there? Why the Rishi has used the word tapaha?
I have no obvious reason that strikes, but it is being tapaha in the context, as I've said, is being interpreted as bhakti, because he has used karma and jnanam. They always, as you know, they always talk in three, you know.
Yeah.
So that's the reason it has been interpreted as karma, bhakti, jnana.
Okay.
And it fits in that tapaha is conservation of energy, of the mental dissipation.
Yeah. Okay.
So the mind has a tendency to wander.
Yeah.
Mind has a tendency to develop attachments. The mind has a tendency to
expend energy.
Expend energy, right? So you need to practice tapas with reference to that, which is nothing but bhakti.
Okay.
Bhakti is what? Is to draw your mind away from the world to the higher. So it fits in there. That's the reason it's been interpreted as bhakti.
Okay.
Right, sir. So when one does the karma, bhakti, jnanam, karma, tapa, and jnanam, it results in a vishuddha sattva. It results in a transformed mind. A mind becomes more sattvic. The mind becomes more stable. Now, another way of finding out, am I doing the right sadhana? Am I doing the 3 yogas as per my requirement? Is to find out, is it changing the characteristic of my mind? Is the nature of my mind changing? In spite of the effort, if the mind doesn't change, then you will have to go back and recalibrate the effort. You'll have to look into your effort. See, the result is not being produced. There's something wrong with the effort. So what is the nature of a tamasic mind? Quickly, let's examine the nature of a tamasic mind. SR, how would you define the nature of a tamasic mind?
Tamasic mind is always in action.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't be active in any of the
You're right. Tamasic mind is inactive. How else can you identify? What are the various flavors of tamasic mind?
It's always conserves the we're trying to conserve the energy on the negative paradigm, because it doesn't get into the action, doesn't add value. I mean to say in a general terms, which I'm trying to make a point.
Right. Okay. Not wrong. You're right. But it has various expression. One is inaction. Let's hear from others. You're right, sir. Let's hear. But if you add up to it, it'll have a broader picture for us to identify. What else is the nature of a tamasic mind? Raghu garu. Can't hear you.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah, I was actually reading on the tamasic mind, the question. I have some chat GPT 4 on the side window. So it is also giving me some very good examples, which I must, I think more accurate information also it is giving me.
Immediately mute him. I'm asking Raghuram, not chat GPT.
Yeah, it's actually helping to understand more, but I'll give you some what I agree with those things. Tamasic
Agree with chat GPT or agree with me?
Yeah, agree with you only, Guruji, but some thoughts I'm bringing out. What they say, tamasic mind is very afraid of change. Like whatever they have the current state of mind, they're afraid for new things and trying new things. And also, tamasic mind is too much indulgence in the materialistic world as well, and lethargy. So these are some of the qualities of tamasic people, like kind of they are stuck in some patterns.
Okay. So the new thing you said is lethargy, indolence.
And afraid of trying new things, or probably
they very rigid. They don't
Yeah.
put any effort because that effort requires brings about or any change requires a lot of effort, and since they're averse to effort, they don't put in that effort for change. All right, okay. All right, so what else? Ushama says contented with whatever they have, no initiative to improve, right? There's no initiative, there is no drive to put effort. Lethargic, no enthusiasm. Shivaji said earlier, procrastination. It has a tendency to constantly postpone things, keep pushing into the future. Sidhuji has said it is a false peace. The tamasic, as we know, tamas mocks tattva. So person who's tamasic thinks he is sattvic, finds excuses not to act, rigid, stubborn, yes. Indifferent, as Sidhuji also said, indifferent to one's duties and responsibilities, abandons them. All of this is tamasic mind. Rajasic mind, all the time, a Rajasic mind is excited, it's agitated, it's full of attachments. A Rajasic mind is restless, is vacillating. Yes, it indulges, it has craving for the world, it runs behind the worldly desires. Excited, all the time excited. Extremely selfish, yes. So if you, even at a glance, if you look at, what did you write down, Harish? Rajasic and Tamasic mind?
Tamasic mind, Guruji. Can you hear me, Guruji?
Yes, yes, yes.
I wrote for nature of tamasic mind, inactive and inaction, indolence, rigid, averse to effort, no initiative to improve, no drive to put effort, no enthusiasm, procrastination, keeps pushing into the future, stubborn, indifferent to one's duties and responsibilities. And nature of the Rajasic mind is excited, agitated, full of attachments, vacillating, indulging, craving for the world, runs behind the worldly desires, extremely selfish and restless.
Perfect. So when a mind of a Rajasic and Tamasic nature, it's certainly unfit for spiritual pursuit. So when one transforms the nature of the mind to a sattvic nature, automatically it's gravitated towards meditation. That's what the concluding part of the 8th mantra says. So the purification of the mind is to purify the mind of this rajas and tamas. So now, Harish, can you tell me what is the trait of a sattvic mind?
A trait of the sattvic mind, Guruji, is being very action oriented, but in a very calm state of mind. Working for a greater cause beyond itself, looking at the totality and not about the family or the company of the individual, is looking for the collective good of humanity, has no expectations of any fruits, is doing it selflessly, with no agendas.
Perfect. Adding to that, we can always say that a sattvic mind, a trademark is it's always contented. Setuji has said. You can say a sattvic mind is always balanced. Yes, Samyama, you can say that. A sattvic mind is certainly introverted. Yes, Lakshmima. On contrary, a rajasic mind is always extroverted. It always runs out into the world. As Setuji earlier said, it's ambitious. It's all the time. The desires in the mind makes it pushing outward. It is goal driven. Yes, goal in the sense here, it has a higher purpose. A sattvic mind is inspired by a larger good. Correct, Raghu, that sattvic individuals are content with what they have and do not need external validation. Looks like ChatGPT definition. You can do your research after the class, not while the class. In the class, you have to engage your intellect, not ChatGPT intellect. Okay, va? So the knowing the different natures of the mind, the objective is to find out at what stage is your mind now is. So when mind slips into a rajasic or a tamasic mode, you should be able to quickly pull yourself out of that state. If somebody were to suggest something to you, and if you are rigid to that change, you don't want to change. What state are you in? US, UK? If somebody is suggesting you to change and you are resisting that change, which state are you?
Either Rajasic or Tamasic, Guruji.
No, either illa. Oru state adu.
Tamasic.
Correct. Gayatri ma, correct. Tamasic.
Tamasic, if you are rigid to your own
Firm about what you believe in and lazy to change also.
I may be firm in what I believe in, but if you don't bring about a change, then there's no growth. So if we are able to look at it from these three gunas, you clearly know how. See, tamasic state also is ignorance. No, you don't know where you are tamasic also.
When
So you
not,
may not, all that what we stated,
it doesn't.
You're not aware of that also. You're shrouded in ignorance or shrouded in tamasa, we can comfortably say. Tamas is dangerous. You certainly can't say Rajas is ignorant. We usually associate, Sitaji, we usually associate tamas to ignorance. You want to clarify anything, Sitaji?
No, Guruji, he is also ignorant. He is extroverted, no? So he is ignorant of. He thinks the world is only acquisition and enjoyment.
That is not ignorance. As Shivaji is saying, a Rajasic person is very.
He is ignorant of the purpose of life.
In that sense, you can say. But a Rajasic person, he is running behind the desires. A Tamasic person may have the desire, doesn't know that he has a desire also. See, I may have a vasana in me, but because of ignorance, I don't even know I have a vasana in me.
He is in comfort zone.
Comfort zone arising out of ignorance. That's why we only associate tamas to ignorance. Rajas is effect of wrong action, agitation, effect of desires, which is mental agitations, effect of selfishness, which is agitation. So Rajas is not ignorance, tamas is ignorance. Now, what is shocking is we have a proportion of sattva, rajas, tamas. Let's say 20% sattva. I'm being very charitable here. 20% sattva, 40% or 50% rajas, 30% tamas. If this is the constitution, how are you able to, how can you identify the rajas and tamas? It's shocking. Everything that we do, there is that flavor of tamas and rajas in it. It reflects in everything that you do. That's the point I'm making. Every action I do, that 50% rajas comes in, 30% tamas comes in, 20% sattva comes in. It's not that certain actions are 100% sattva and rest of actions are 90% tamasic. It's not that. Everything that you do, this constitution reflects. So there's so much that you can do to improve the characteristics of each action that you do. And for which you need to be mindful as how these gunas express, so that you can take remedial measures to the rajas and tamasic quotient in each one. Though the transformation of tattva, rajas, tamas can only happen through karma, tapaha, and jnanam. That's a long-term process. But even while you're performing action, you can be mindful. Am I being too rigid? Am I being too indulgent? Am I procrastinating? Am I being result-oriented? You can be mindful of these characteristics and arrest those qualities at that point. It's like one thing is to learn driving, to become a perfect driver. It's yet another thing, while you're driving, you can be corrected at the point of while you're making mistakes, isn't it? They're two different things. I hope you all are getting what I'm saying. So this level of awareness at every step of the action raises your ability to come out of rajas and tamas. I see many people, most people are very rigid. They don't want to change. They want to change, but they don't want to put effort. I want to change, Guruji, but then they will not put any effort to do something which are being told to. They only do what, it's like a beaten path. They continue to do what they have been doing. How can you bring about a change? Very rigid. And the moment somebody is rigid, you stop advising. You can't advise people because they can't receive anything. Ushama, before I just clarify, Harish, yes, you can ask Harish, but Ushama, is ignorance equal to contentment in case of tamasic individual? The contentment in a tamasic individual is arising out of ignorance. As they say, ignorance is bliss, isn't it? It is not the same level of contentment arising out of establishment in wisdom. That's a different contentment. Yes, Harish?
Oh, Guruji, actually, my question was the same as Ushaji, because exactly the same. Because in Sattvic, we said they're always contented. And my question was, isn't also tamasic mind also contented, but in a negative way, versus Sattvic is contented in a positive way? That was my specific question. And Ushaji just answered it.
Yeah. But what is the difference further if you enunciate the difference between tamasic contentment and sattvic contentment? Sattvic contentment is the desire is, there is no underlying desire. Tamasic contentment, the desire is there. You feel as if there is no desire, but the desire is just dormant. In sattvic contentment, there is no desire. Desire is eradicated. So the bliss of the self, the bliss or contentment is arising from the attainment of the self, the fulfillment of the self, the paripurnata, the state of paripurna as we call it. Tamasic fellow also is content, but it comes out of ignorance of his, it's full of ignorance. In that state of ignorance, the desires are very much lurking. You all right, Harish?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, Hariji?
There is between a sattvic and tamasic person, many of their characteristics are identical. It is more or less same. A highly sattvic person may be sitting in a cave doing nothing but like Buddha. People used to shout at him when he went for bhiksha. Why don't you go and work and earn your food? But they never knew the type of energy, internal energy that he had and the work that he was performing. That is, they interpreted that as laziness, refusing to work for earn his living. Or even if he sits, Ramana Maharshi, he was sitting very calm and without talking, without getting involved in any external activity. Many people interpreted that as he was a parasite. So there is, unless we very cautiously understand the calmness of a highly active, mentally active sattvic person, many people interpret that as a sign of tamasic.
Yeah, you're true. But we also need to understand sattva is adopting action to obligation.
Yeah, true.
Wherever there is action where you have an obligation, you must perform. A sattvic mind recognizes that obligation to action. Whatever has to be done, it will be done without the fruits. Rajasic mind is running behind, it's not obligated driven, it's desire driven. Tamasic state is inaction. So mentally you must be, a sattvic mind is mentally inactive. A Rajasic mind is mentally active.
Can we
In
say
fact,
can we say a sattvic mind is mentally inactive? Will he not
means
be
inactive in the sense transactive.
okay.
It's a transactive state.
Yeah.
That's why I was about to correct the terminology. Sattvic mind is transactive. A Rajasic mind is hyperactive.
Yeah.
A Tamasic
Indulgent.
mind is inactive.
Yeah.
Inactive
Oh.
state. So you at the mental level you are at that
Externally.
state. Physically, externally also you will be very active.
Yeah.
A sattvic mind doesn't necessarily mean is physically inactive. You will be physically active.
No. If you compare a person like Guru, like Shankaracharya, at that young age, he has been so much karma yoga that
Right. See, we should not. We should refrain from understanding a concept through a personality.
Yeah.
Then
sure,
problem
sure.
is we'll try to define it by a personality. Don't do that.
Yes.
You must understand the concept and apply it in our lives, not try to objectify it and fit into. Then tomorrow we'll say, oh, Sattva is being Ramana Maharshi.
Yeah.
I mean, you will not do action. You will also want to find, put a plaster on your mouth and sit quietly.
Yeah.
Mentally, you will be frustrated, not the same state of what the great Ramana Maharshi was.
That's the real sign of tamasic.
No,
Okay.
that's what I'm saying. Let's not understand it through a personality.
True, very true.
Right. Yes, SR?
Guruji, we just learned in the business, there is a Pareto law, which says that 80% of effects comes from the 20% of the causes. Why I'm trying to make this analogy here, like we just take an example of a tamasic proportion of 20% and Rajasic 50, and tamasic 30. This 30%, even though number-wise, it seems to be less in comparison with the Rajasic proportion of 50. But the impact is going to be very high on both on the sattvic, and assuming that we have these three proportions. My point of communication is that the damaging factor of any percentage increase, like a 20% will impact on 80%, which has been proven on the most of the things. You put a right effective 20%, it will give 80% results. Similarly, the proportionate of tamasic is a more damaging and influencing factor, even though you are assuming that, let me change the pattern. You have 80% of sattvic and 10% of Rajasic and 10% of tamasic. This 10% of tamasic may have a great influence on other two. But why I'm trying to say that the motives behind we're talking about a lethargy, procrastination, afraid of change, are such a rigid and such a damaging things. Even though you have a very good qualities, will never allow. I think somewhere this is my perception. What I'm trying to say, in no way we talk about allowing or not thinking about where we should have, like a drop of poison will spoil the whole milk. And the smallest content will have a determinant effect on the rest of the two. Okay, Rajasic is something where you can able to cut it, but Tamasic, that's my perception that out of these three, the Tamasic is going to be the most deterring factor in human beings. And first of all, the rigid for a change is, I seen in my life to change to even for years together, I monitor, but I don't think. Never, never. Anything they teach and preach, but they when to comes to their self, that is immune from change. I just want to make my submission.
Right, sir. No, the three gunas are constantly influencing, but it is quality over quantity. So as one sattva increases, you will find it starts influencing tamas and rajas. No, I really don't know in terms of whether it be 30%, 50%, 10%, whatever. To that extent, it does influence the person and the actions. It does influence. Yeah, Hariji.
There comes the role of intellect. How the tamasic fellow turns to Rajasic and then to Sattvic. The role of intellect is very, very predominant. If our intellect doesn't play a role, then the tamasic will remain as a tamasic. If that is the case, then there will not be any jnani in this world. Even a person like Ratnagar, if he could get himself changed to Vatmiki, he had a lot of tamasic quality. How did he become a Ratnagar, became a Vatmiki? So the role of intellect plays a predominant role.
See, the role of intellect or the role of effort.
Yeah.
The
sure.
role of self-effort.
Yeah.
That's what you are saying, you know?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like these three gunas are three different fields.
Sure.
You know, see the example, right? Yes, Hariji, you know, the three examples we are given is like one is a vegetable garden, other is a fruit garden, other is a flower garden. The vegetable garden is a tamasic garden, the fruit garden, rajasic garden, the flower garden is a sattvic garden. Imagine you're not feeding the sattvic garden. What will happen to the garden? The flowers will start fading away, the plants will start dying. But if you are constantly feeding the fruit garden and the vegetable garden, they will keep growing and yielding in leaps and bounds. They keep producing. So irrespective of what you have, it depends on what you do to it. I may have 30% tamas in me, but am I feeding my tamas? That choice you have. I may only have 20%. Am I feeding my I may have 20% sattva. Am I feeding my sattva? Therefore, that's the reason we are told that there are these gunas that manifest at specific timings. So if you want to change the proportion of sattva, you must be active at the sattvic hour, which is Brahma Muhurtam. Your sattva, please mark my words, your sattva will only increase if you are active 4 to 6. Your sattva will not increase if you are not active at 4 to 6. What happens is most of the time, tamas is most predominant 4 to 6 a.m. People come and tell me it's the most comfortable time to sleep, Guruji. You feel so comfortable, so sleepy, so cozy between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. I tell you, I get the best sleep at that hour. Well, I repeat, your sattva will only increase if you're active between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. And doing what? You must do swadhyaya. So you have the choice to feed your vegetable garden, your fruit garden or flower garden. The choice is with you, sir. And with consistent effort, if you feed the sattva, it's a matter of time, sattva will increase. And proportionately, the other two gunas will reduce, will drop, will fall off. So you need to bring about a paradigm shift in your focus as to what you want to do. Okay, Reddy Garu. I'll take a last question and we'll wind up. Can a person become sattvic after analyzing oneself elaborately and set right faults? Definitely, we have to put Herculean effort. I don't understand the question. Going late to bed is certainly tamasic. Switch off your phone by 9 o'clock. Setuji, goal for you is switching off your phone by 9 p.m. Vasantama is laughing. Yes, Vasantama?
No, Guruji, nothing.
You cut off from the world. So when we come back, we'll get on with the text. We'll take up 9th mantra. We'll conclude. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.